Today, I want to talk to you about uncovering your intuitive abilities or your psychic skills. And that's the reason that many of us gather and watch content like this, right? That's what we're here seeking to do. But it comes up for me about how and why. These are the things that I'm going to address today. This is from research that basically happens by me engaging with my clients. And then, of course, just as a teacher, as one who endeavors to be a teacher of spiritual concepts, then Spirit will just put it in my mind and say, here's the thing people need to hear. And so I'm going to start with why, and then and then I'll go to how. And that leads me into the first thing being how. That thing, like I said, that Spirit dropped into my mind a few days ago. Why develop your spiritual abilities or your psychic senses or your abilities, your intuitive abilities? The reason why is because basically that's what we do here. We develop our skills and then we offer them to others, or we offer them out into the world. That is kind of the function of being a part of an ecosystem. You know, I'm a Gaia gal, I'm an earth lady, I'm an animal communicator, I'm a nature communicator, a prophet for Gaia. So I'm always bringing you examples from nature. And the reason that I do this also is because we are nature. We're not just in nature, and so we understand nature. It's just basically how our bodies work. It's who we are. So an ecosystem is about give and take. You know, it's about exchange, energetic exchange. So the reason I bring this up, what I'm actually saying is develop a skill. This is why. The why should we develop a skill is because it is the resolution to a lot of the reaching that we feel as we're going through the journey, as we're going through the life. And just to give you some context of why I'm stating it this way is that I have clients sometime who have perhaps gone through a spiritual awakening or are in this process of awakening somewhere along that path. That's generally the kind of people that reach out and book intuitive readings, right? And they're in there, if they've had some kind of transition, whether it's a new transition or it's just increasing their connection to their spirituality, and they may feel that life, your spiritual life, is contrary to your real life or your regular life, and that your regular life is causing a lot of discomfort. Maybe there isn't enough abundance in your regular job. Maybe that regular job or regular occupation or the lack thereof is just simply not satisfying you, and it asks you to be in a manner, to behave or to be in a state that doesn't feel as good to you as, say, when you are engaging in a spiritual community or watching spiritual videos or giving or receiving an intuitive reading or some kind of session in that regard. So if there is an occupation or a lack thereof that is causing that discord in you, then the answer is develop a skill. And the funny thing about that, developing a skill, an intuitive or psychic skill, is actually a very grounded thing to do. Now, that probably sounds funny to people in the outside world. Oh, it's grounded to develop a psychic skill? Because psychic is astral, you know what I mean? Grounded is, it seems like that they're actually in opposition to one another, being grounded or being spiritual or being astral, you know? They're not. I mean, it's also a give and take. So we actually want to bring forth that feeling, that powerful feeling about your spiritual expression, and we ground it into developing a skill. And that, like I say, is just what we do here in this physical experience, in this incarnated plane, you know? We develop a skill or we develop some kind of offering, and we give that so that we can receive back its equivalent. Now, when I say develop a skill, it could be Reiki, it could be healing, it could be teaching and inspiring, it could be reading, an intuitive reader or psychic reader of some kind, a medium. And I want to tell you, I'm telling this to you in a way that makes it just something that you can move for, you can make actionable. Because I think we think, what are my gifts? How do these things happen to me? You know what I mean? Like, we don't have any choice in things. But you are actually creating your life. So you can make the choice to become a medium. I believe that any of us could do that. And if that calls to your heart, then you don't have to compare yourself to someone else and say, but I'm not one of those people who had ghosts knocking on their door when they were 7 years old. That has nothing to do with being able to be skilled or use that mediumistic gift. That doesn't have anything to do with it. Those are actually two separate issues. Having spiritual encounters and psychic phenomenon happen to you without you seemingly beckoning it has to do with other things. It has to do with your personality, and it has to do with your development personally. I don't know if that strikes you guys as strange, but that's the truth about it. There are people, actually the person who's going to be on my show this coming Sunday, I have a show called Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. And it's an internet TV talk show and a podcast. And so the person who's going to be on my show this coming Sunday her name is Penny Pierce. She's this amazing, groundbreaking author of spiritual content. She's been writing books since, I think, the early 90s for personal transition and high metaphysical and spiritual concepts. And Penny was not a psychic child, is what she says. I was not a psychic child. I didn't have psychic phenomena happen to me. Basically, she didn't have some kind of kundalini, fantastical, oh my gosh, I woke up and there was Archangel Michael, or, my grandfather standing in front of me physically who had passed. She just pursued it. She pursued intuitive development. And that is absolutely as relevant and as much of a calling, and actually what you have to do anyway, because you do create your reality. Even if your grandfather was your dead grandfather standing at the end of your bed, you still need to make the choice to pursue intuitive development and to pursue honing that skill and actually using it as a tool. So that's one of the whys is the reason or how you do it is because, I should say, I'm kind of getting jumbled, but you know what I mean. Because that's what we do. And so these clients who say, I'm really unhappy with the things I have to do every day, I really want to just feel the way I do when I'm engaging in spiritual community or spiritual sessions or reading my spiritual material or whatever it is, however they feel very engaged with their spiritual nature and their spiritual side. But they feel like, but I'm not an intuitive because I've never done it before. But that's how things always start out. You don't do it before. Even if your dead grandfather was standing at the end of your bed, you didn't do anything really good for that to happen. It wasn't a skilled event. So I always liken it to arts, because to me, it 100% is art, the intuitive and the spiritual functioning. I call myself a healing artist for that reason. I feel that it really brings into your understanding what this nature is. It also is another way of grounding it, because we've understood artists for a long time. I mean, as much as we can. And an artist who needs to write a song sits there and clears their mind and allows a melody to come from nowhere to their mind. That's basically claircognizance, is what I just described. A musician, to further this metaphor, also develops a technical skill. So a person could be really talented naturally, as like they say they sat at a piano when they were a little kid and they could figure out how to mimic play by ear. But in order to become a professional pianist and in order to become a skilled composer, that person needs to actually develop the technical skill. And so it's both. And the reason we develop the technical skill so much is so that we can let the spiritual side of it just completely flow. Let the flow of the from nowhere to somewhere just actually be easy. And we then allow our instrument to cooperate with it. Same goes for doing anything in the spiritual profession. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a profession. It doesn't have to be giving yourself those steps too. Developing a skill doesn't mean that you have to put up a website tomorrow and then you have to try to figure out how to be an online business entrepreneur. I have a friend who is a realtor, and she uses her intuitive insight in her real estate business because she sees her real estate business as coaching. And she's always been a very intuitive person, and she's actually a life coach by training as well. And she just decided to channel it into real estate, and she really loves it, you know. And she's using her spiritual skills in that way. So these are some of the reasons why you would want to. Another reason why is to that point of, let's just say, abundance. And abundance doesn't have to be just cash, but cash, by the way, go ahead and think of cash when I say that, because the reason we really desire a flow of abundance and a flow of prosperity and actual money is so that we can feel free. And we can feel free to spend more time shining our light and helping the world and healing others and spreading compassion. Having money that is just easy and available keeps us from wasting time having to take a job telemarketing, you know what I mean? Not that that is completely contrary. You can still be a very spiritual person while you're doing telemarketing, but you get my example. But we can also put in the bucket of abundance that, freedom, time, having time as a resource, and also emotional freedom. So attracting the love and the relating that you want in your life, and just having all of that resource of energy. That's what abundance, that's what we can think about when we say abundance. Well, the reason that developing or uncovering your spiritual or psychic or intuitive abilities will aid in that is because if you have a yearning for it, and if it makes you feel aligned in order to be working in the space of spirituality, then your abundance will begin to flow by the simple fact that you will be in allowance. Abundance can't flow to you if you are in resistance to what you are doing in order to connect with abundance. I'm actually going to say that again because it was pretty much everything. Abundance can't flow to you if you are in resistance to what you are doing to allow abundance to flow to you. Does that make sense? I think it does. So this is what developing your abilities or uncovering your abilities will afford for you. It definitely will connect you with abundance. And like I said, it is what we came here to do. That we came here to manifest and contribute our uniqueness to the field, to that ecosystem. So what that also means is that you must wake up from a lack matrix, from the social conditioning matrix, which says that you must do something that makes you uncomfortable or unhappy, because good girls just go to school and they just are quiet, and that's what good girls do. That's just an example, and parents don't feel bad because sometimes I think you have to tell your children that. But you see what I mean. The lack matrix of social conditioning, I'm just calling it that. I hear Amanda Flaker say that all the time. She's an amazing online teacher. She has a great YouTube channel, and she's going to be on my show in March. But she talks about the lack matrix, and that we are basically entrained to it. The matrix is the term that we use a lot. The movie The Matrix really gave us a great picture of this. But this idea of the lack matrix telling us that we must betray ourselves in order to be good, in order to be functioning. We've had long in our history of stories that the martyr is the person who is the most pious. The person who suffers is pious. And then the fat cat, the person who is abundant, that's always the evil person. You see, that's ego. Ego created that story. You can have a poor person who is stealing from the field, and you can have a wealthy person who is making so many lives better. #Oprah. But the thing is that you need to do you have to wake up from this lack matrix and choose to partner with the world of spirit, choose to identify yourself as spirit, and choose to you don't have to take yourself completely out of the world You don't take yourself away from people or become above it, but the idea, again, that movie, if you haven't seen The Matrix, if you're too young to have really seen The Matrix, what they actually do in that film, The Matrix, is they wake up from it and then they go back into it and they learn how to master it. And so that's what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to wake up from this idea, from this lack consciousness, from this lack training, and then get back into it from a place of power in partnership with spirit and in sovereignty of yourself as a spiritual being, and make it a better place, make it a better matrix. And now we're no longer really engaging in the lack matrix. We're engaging and we're exchanging with the beauty of the ecosystem that is this divine universe. So that is the why. How? How do you uncover your abilities? Well, I have a very easy tip. I've talked about it before. I've heard Crystal Compton talk about it before. It's powerful. It's easy. So one easy tip as to how to is observe what you were doing as a kid. So as a kid, I was wallowing around in nature, being obsessed with animals and cats and talking to animals all day long. Going out, I grew up in Texas, so I was exploring all of the creeks and any backwoods and going to the pasture, as we always called it, just going out to this open land. We'd say every week, how kids ask for candy, every week. I asked to go to the pasture every week it's just what we called it. It was this place where we could go, and it was somebody's land that was acres and acres and acres, and they had some cows, and there were plenty of other nature, and there were some swimming holes, and oh my gosh, it was absolute heaven for me. Like literally, it is heaven to me. So I was doing that. I was also dragging around my tape recorder that I got in 1985, and I was interviewing my family. And I have a show now where I actually interview people. I was also doing things like performing for my family and performing for my school, dancing, acting, and singing and stuff like that. Now, that takes me to the subpoint of observing what you did as a kid, is to sort of not take it too literally sometimes. Sometimes it's literal, like I was taking around my tape recorder and interviewing people, and I was also talking to animals, and working with nature as a child. So far as the performance aspect of it, for me, it wasn't because I loved dance, and I was an okay dancer, and I danced for a while. And I'm a really good singer, but I'm not great, and I certainly could never make a living at it. I was a really good actress. I am a really good actress, but I actually sort of evolved past that medium when I came into my spiritual profession and career and mission. So when I say don't take it so literally, the performance aspect for me is about inspiring. And so that now translates into me teaching, like I am right now. So I just give you that tip because sometimes when we're trying to observe ourselves with objectivity, we could get so literal and be like, well, but I was a dancer. No, feel into what dancing meant for you, or what the satisfaction of it was, and how that may have evolved today, what that is calling to today. The second step for how you can uncover your abilities is to give yourself permission. This sort of dovetails from that waking up from the lack matrix and committing to setting an intention to work with spirit. Give yourself permission to uncover your abilities. This is an effort of growing in your sovereignty, growing in your self-love. That is also I want to say that is a fundamental purpose that you have here, is to grow in your self-love. That is healing, becoming whole. And by the way, you are whole, so it's identifying with the fact that you're whole. This is a dual experience, and that means, what I mean by it's a dual experience, and it is an experience of duality, is, in highest truth, it's only the singularity, it's only one, it's only God, it's only the universe, and this is a sea of energy, and we are all expressions of source energy. We are all expressions of God. So as God, or source energy, chose to expand and understand and observe and express itself, we, along with the infinite of other individualized consciousnesses, and by that, I don't just mean humans, and I don't just mean angels, and I don't just mean crystals, and I don't just mean plants. I do mean all of that, all of the countless things. I also mean the grain of sand. That is also a consciousness, and it's also an element of sentience. As it chose to understand and expand itself, we became. We were created. So that's the duality. Source energy, us. God, expression of God. So we are God. We are the universe. We are source energy. So we do, the purpose of our life is to grow in self-love. That is a sort of individual. That is one of the aspects of the dual experience. And the second aspect of the dual experience is to become the perspective of being connected to that all. So we have the identifying with the power of the individual, and then identifying with the power of the collective. That's the dual experience. That is your life purpose. You want to know what your life purpose is? There it is. Drop the mic. Well, that's not a microphone. And the microphone's right here. I'll just clunk. Sorry, I'm silly. Another point as to how you can uncover your intuitive or psychic abilities is to enjoy the journey. Now, does that sound like, wow, that's not very helpful, spiritual teacher Tricia, whoever you think you are? It is helpful, and I'll tell you why. This is also referencing that point of giving yourself permission. It's also referencing the point of the dual experience. You must enjoy the journey because it is the way that we connect with presence. Presence is God. Presence is singularity. It is the only place where we can meet source energy is in the present moment. And the reason, and it's also an acceptance of the self. It is an acceptance of the self as the creator. Because in this moment, when we deny this moment, when we are out of presence, we are actually denying the truth that we created this moment. So we're rejecting ourselves when we become non-present. Even in the very beginning, if you are in this moment setting the intention to uncover your abilities or new expressions of your abilities, in this moment, be excited and in full acceptance of where you are in this journey. We tend to be impatient. You know, I want to change my life. It's going to take a long time. I want to be over there. I'm unhappy with where I am now. But that is actually what slows us down. If you become deeply present and enjoy where you are right now, find a way to be in appreciation, which is a great word because it means we're adding to it. It's another way to be in gratitude, but instead we're adding to it. We're so grateful to it that we're adding to it when we're in appreciation of where we are now, and we enjoy every single step of the way. It is totally appropriate to be looking at our goals in a way that is loving and powerful, and we attune to it by experiencing the end goal as a present feeling. You see, when we create a vision board, we're actually not being non-present. If we're doing it the right way, I should say, we're being present, and that is actually what is powerfully manifesting about a vision board, just as an example, is the fact that it helps us to attune to that energy, and we affirm the feeling of it in the now. And that's how we actually bring those things into our existence, or we create them, we materialize them. So if you're expecting to be somewhere else at this moment, you'll move very slowly or not at all. Or rather, when you're expecting to be, when you're denying where you are right now, you will not be able to move forward. And I have an example for you, and from my own experience about it's I think it'll bring this into illumination for us a little bit more. I did a class with the Lightworkers Lab 2 months ago. I think I did it in December 2017. Yeah, it was in December. And I just did a 2-day class for meeting and working with your elemental guides. Oh, big passion of mine, big purpose of mine is the elemental realms. And so while I was preparing for the class, actually, of course, I was deepening my connection with my own elemental guides, and I was asking for help to be able to channel the information and all that kind of stuff that would best serve the students. And so this one particular elemental guide of mine, his name, I called him Franklin. That was the name that I called him. He was Earth Elemental, and he was sort of like a junior gnome in a way. I'm just checking. He says, that's fine. You can call me whatever you want. And I was working with Franklin. He was a very assertive dude. and very forthright with me. He even cursed a little bit, and I realized that as I was hearing him talk that he was cursing. I was like, wait, are you cursing? And he's like, I'm just using the thing that gets you going, because it was interesting. Even though he was an earth elemental, he had a very fiery spirit about him. So I was working with him, and I was sort of envisioning, conscious envisioning. I was actually, if I don't actually have a vision board, it's actually just not a tool that I particularly use. But if I were looking at my vision board, I was pining for it rather than feeling the vibration of it, is really what I was doing. And so I was asking Franklin, how do I get there? How do I get there? How do I get there? How do I bring more abundance to me? How do I bring more prosperity or abundance? And Franklin pointed to a lime tree that I have in my backyard. It's a beautiful, it makes this beautiful key limes. They're so delicious. And citrus is a winter fruit, and this was in December. And so my key lime tree was just raining all this beautiful fruit. So robust and delicious and succulent. And there were all these key limes on the ground, and there were more that were just really hanging low and ready to fall off the tree. And Franklin said to me, how dare you ask for more when you let those limes stay on the ground? And you see, he meant that literally, because the elementals are really concerned with nature. I mean, that's their job. And they are managing, like the ones who are your guides, are managing your relationship to nature and your relationship in this plane, but particularly from the responsibility of Gaia. And he said, literally saying, you need to go out there and pick up those limes. I know you can't use them all. That's not the point. Put a sign out there. Your neighbors will walk by. I have a neighbor 2 doors down who has a lemon tree. He's like, that person is putting the lemons out for the neighbors to, if they rot there, if you can't possibly give them all away, well, then that's fine. Then they become a part of the earth. But you are letting this abundance that is you're the steward of this tree, and it is raining abundance for you. And you're ignoring those limes. So don't you dare ask for more abundance when you don't pick up the limes that are on the ground. And what that did was had me look exactly where I was. It's literal. And then the metaphor that was helpful was also, I had so much right now in front of me to still unpack about my experience. If I'm talking about my professional life, I have literally bags of limes right now that I am not juicing, that I need to understand before I am ready to move forward to this next big fantastical thing that I have thinking I'm so ready for and I want so much. It's like, no, what you want so much is right here in front of you because you created these limes. This is the abundance that you have right now. You denying it is as sure as you denying the abundance that you're claiming you desire. So enjoy the journey. Pick up those limes off the ground. Be in the present moment. That is the second point of how. So to recap about uncovering your intuitive or your psychic abilities. Why? You want to develop a skill. Why do you want to develop a skill? Because that's what we do here. Because in order to solve some of that discord about what you're doing day to day, you want to develop a skill to help you to connect with your higher calling in the spiritual and physical, the combination of spiritual and physical space. Second, why? Because abundance flows to you when you're excited about what you're doing. When you are in resistance to what you do in order to receive abundance, then you will not have it flow to you. Third reason of why is because it is what you came here to do, to manifest your uniqueness and then contribute it to the field. And how? The first thing I told you about how was a very easy tip, is to observe what you did as a child. It is an excellent indicator. You were much more natural before you had taken on less of that lack matrix when you were a child, and you were doing what your soul had planned to do. So in my case, it was, the animals and the interviewing people. And then also you can take some of those things and not take them so literally and look at the energy underneath them and see what the feeling of it was and how it may have evolved to now. And that can really tell you how you can develop them. The second point of how is to give yourself permission to actually pursue uncovering your abilities. And the third way as to how is to enjoy the journey, be present, and pick up the limes off the ground. And that means to look at the abundance you have right now, look at the talent, the skill, the resources, the time, and be in acceptance and appreciation of all of those gifts.